Hello, Governor.
Okay, well, our office has 4 divisions: business services, auto dealers, elections, and securities. And it's through the securities division that makes me interested and focus on financial literacy.
The Indiana Secretary of State is an office that was created in the original Indiana Constitution in 1816 as the 3rd highest ranking official in state government. Today, that office is held by the 61st Indiana Secretary of State, Connie Lawson. Connie Lawson, a Republican from Danville, Indiana, served in the Indiana Senate for 16 years, during which time she chaired both the Local Government and Elections Committee and Joint Rules Committee, and served as the first woman majority floor leader in the Indiana Senate. The Secretary of State is typically an elected office. However, Connie Lawson was appointed by Governor Mitch Daniels in 2012 after former Secretary of State Charlie White from Fishers was indicted for 7 felony charges, mostly voter fraud. Secretary of State Connie Lawson will serve out White's term. The term length is 4 years, and there is no limit on how many times a person may serve as Secretary of State, although they may not serve for more than 8 years of any 12-year period. The Secretary of State's duties include maintenance of state records, preservation of the state seal, chartering new businesses, regulating securities industry, oversight of state elections, commissioning of notaries public, registration of trademarks, and licensing of vehicle dealerships throughout Indiana. The Secretary of State's office provides several services for the community, including they set up elections, declare winners, regulate campaign finances. They help establish businesses, make the rules for small business licensing, and they regulate all securities investments and debt collecting agencies. The Secretary of State is the head of a very large branch of the executive branch that handles all these duties. Connie Lawson's day-to-day consists of making policy that will affect the broad implementation of their duties instead of reviewing each individual case. It is important to vote for the Secretary of State because of several reasons. They provide many services for the community. It is important to elect a trustworthy and stable individual to the office so that we can avoid problems like the political tension that arose from the appointment of an interim Secretary of State after former Secretary of State Charlie White was arrested. And finally, the Secretary of State office has many important jobs. They can bring their own personal views into the job to influence the making and implementation of policy that will drastically affect small business owners, drivers, and all voters.
Hi, I'm Sue Ellsperman. I'm candidate for House District 74, representing DuBois, Perry, Spencer, and Warwick County.
Out of the 50 states in the United States, 45 of them have an office of lieutenant governor. Indiana is currently on its 50th lieutenant governor, Republican Sue Ellsperman. Previous to her current position, Ellsperman served in the Indiana House of Representatives, representing Warwick, Spencer, and parts of DuBois and Perry County, Indiana. Ellsperman was announced as Mike Pence's running mate in the 2012 election, and the two went on to defeat their Democratic opponents. That of the lieutenant governor is an office which is elected in a statewide election every 4 years, concurrent with that of the United States presidential election. The term for this position is limited so that no lieutenant governor can serve more than 8 years in any 12-year period. Primarily, the lieutenant governor serves as the president of the Indiana Senate, in which they are able to debate on and introduce legislation as well as vote in order to break ties. Similarly, they have influence over the legislative calendar and some control over what legislation will be considered. The lieutenant governor's secondary role is as a successor to the governorship or to act as governor if necessary. Since 1932, the office's powers have expanded to include the chairmanship of the Office of Community of Rural Affairs, the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority, Office of the Energy and Defense Development, and the Office of Tourism Development. Important positions filled by the Lieutenant Governor also include the Corn Marketing Council, the Main Street Council, Steel Advisory Commission, and the Indiana Film Commission. In addition, the Lieutenant Governor participates as a member of the Natural Resources Committee, State Office Building Commission, Air Pollution Control Board, Water Pollution Control Board, and Solid Waste Management Board. Lieutenant Governor's daily schedule consists of important oversight of the Indiana Senate, as well as their many roles and chairmanships throughout the community. It is important to give one's input when voting for the Lieutenant Governor because whoever holds this position has much influence on the state Senate and what and how legislation is debated. Also, if something were to happen to the governor, this is the person who would take over in governing the state. The Lieutenant Governor wears many hats in their community, and if one does not vote for their preferred candidate, then their voice may not be heard in these many factions of the state.
Together we will open doors of educational opportunity for all of our kids. Together we will approach our third century with confidence, and Indiana will again become a torch of opportunity and hope, inspiring our people and inspiring our nation.
As part of Indiana's original constitution, the position of governor, the highest-ranking elected official, was established in 1816. The first governor of Indiana to be inaugurated was Jonathan Jennings on November 7th of 1816. During his term as governor and for the terms of the next three governors, the capital of Indiana was Corydon. It was removed to Indianapolis in 1824 and has since remained the capital of Indiana. There have only been 2 attempts to impeach Indiana's governors, both of which were unsuccessful. Indiana's governor has held slightly less power than the General Assembly and Indiana's Supreme Court up until the 1970s. It was at this time that there were several amendments to the state's constitution. Although the executive branch has grown, it still holds less power when compared to other states. The current governor, former representative of Indiana's 6th District, Mike Pence, was elected in 2012. As a Republican candidate, he won by a 3% margin against Democrat John Gregg. Pence was inaugurated in January of 2013 and is currently serving in the second year of his 4-year term. While there are no term limits, one can be elected for governor for 8 years in a 12-year period. As governor, Mike Pence's duties include signing bills into law, serving as a commander-in-chief of the state's National Guard and militia forces, delivering the state of the state address to citizens, granting pardons to prisoners, appointing people to various judicial and state offices, influencing legislature, enforcing all the state's laws and Indiana code through Indiana State Police. While serving their term, the governor and his family live in the governor's mansion. The governor works out of the Indiana State House while he holds official functions at the governor's mansion. He attends banquets and fundraisers for various causes and hosts dignitaries of other states and countries to improve the image of Indiana. The role of governor is an important one because they have influence over what kind of legislature passes. They also have power to veto, which can be overridden by a simple majority. Indiana is one of 7 states to not have a line-item veto to strike out certain provisions of a bill without vetoing the entire bill. As the leader of Indiana, he controls the National Guard troops in times of crisis or disaster. He also appoints judges whom can affect the perception of what is considered constitutional and unconstitutional in what passes in the legislature. And lastly, it is most important to remember if a person's beliefs are to be considered at the state level, they must vote for the candidate for governor that shares those beliefs and believes that will lead the state sufficiently as well.
That's all, folks.